Hey, welcome everybody to this edition of Boost Your Relationship. Once again, we're excited to be here and engage in this topic with you.
Once again, I'm Simon. This is Maren Middle. We're relationship coaches, and we are excited to be here and to share our topic today, which is
Prediction versus perception. And as you hear that, you might be going, what the heck is that? And it's a great question. This is a topic that I'm really passionate about and excited about because of how great of impact it's had on my personal life. So we're here to explain how your brain works in terms of prediction and what can we do to navigate away from worry and anxiety when our brain goes that direction in prediction.
so one of the things you might be thinking is, okay, I understand prediction. What is, and think about a situation where maybe you've kind of been worried about what's going to happen in a certain interaction, maybe at work or at home. And in your mind, what ends up happening is you start predicting what that outcome is going to look like or what that interaction is going to look like.
And when you think about worry, that pretty much is exactly what Simon's talking about when the prediction goes in a negative direction. Now, it is a normal thing that our brains would go to prediction. I think about we need that. We need that as a skill in order to learn. If I'm learning a math problem, we start with addition, and then eventually we're going to go to multiplication because our brain is going to take the information we've already learned and use that to make some predictions on how the next steps work.
And so part of this is that we're not saying that we shouldn't be predicting because we can't stop that. That's actually a very normal part of our brain chemistry and our brain function. The question really is, when do we have a negative prediction versus when do we have a positive prediction? And we can actually train ourselves towards more of a positive prediction.
I think about the negative prediction having some benefit.
Sure.
Like I was thinking about as kids, you put your hand on the hot stove and you learn really quick, that hurts. I'm not going to do that again. So the next time you walk by the stove, your brain is predicting, if that's hot, I'm going to get hurt. So even some of that negative prediction can be helpful because it's our brain's way of trying to keep us safe. But when would you say that it's not helpful?
Well, one of the things that I know for interpersonal relationships is we sometimes will bring a history in that will then determine what we predict is going to happen. So, for example, I grew up in a family where we had a lot of intense emotion, and that emotion was normally seen as a negative. And so, if I have intense emotion and I'm interacting with Maren or really anybody, I might have the negative prediction that people are going to judge it, people are going to see that as negative, versus now how do I switch that into a positive prediction?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And the reality is we do all have history and our brains remember a lot of that stuff. And even if we don't consciously remember, I know that there's emotional memories. So some of that prediction is not even going to cross our logical field. It's going to be more reactive or emotional, and it's still based on prediction.
And part of that is how much can we gain some awareness about some of those things so it isn't so unconscious and really becomes more of a conscious awareness of what's actually leading to my negative prediction or my lack of perception or what's actually happening here. And once we start making those connections between things in our past, things in our present, things that we have learned to be negative, then we can start to actually change those things.
Mm-hmm. I'm just trying to think right now, do we have an example of how negative prediction kind of backfired in our relationship? We have lots of examples. We have lots of questions. Can we think of one right now?
Right. Honestly, nothing's coming to mind right now, which doesn't mean that we don't have them. Okay, because I know we do.
Okay, I have one.
Right.
So in the past, Simon didn't always let me know when he was going to be late. Like if he said, I'm going to be home at a certain time, And then it was a little bit later, you wouldn't think to text or call. So this became a big source of my anxiety and frustration and anger. So when a situation would happen and I think Simon's going to be home at a certain time and he's not, automatically my brain is going to he's not communicating with me, he's not thinking about me, he doesn't care about me, all because of the prediction from past times when he didn't communicate.
Another example, as you're talking about that, is I'm thinking about in the work environment. Maybe you're working with a team, and there are certain team members that you can rely on, and some you can't. And some of that is actually based on this negative prediction or positive prediction about each person on the team. And so that's another example of who will you talk to on the team to try and get something done versus who won't you talk to, because you don't really believe that they can get it done. And that's part of that negative and positive prediction as well.
Now, what really gets us in trouble is when we get stuck in the negative prediction pathway in our brain and in our thinking. And it can really even lead to like catastrophic thinking. So actually this has happened to me, and this was actually in the beginning of our relationship because I grew up with a lot of fear and anxiety. If Simon was late and he didn't let me know, my mind would automatically go to, he was in an accident, he's dead on the side of the road. Like my mind would go to literally worst case scenario for me. And that would boost my anxiety immediately, like to a 10. So that really, like that pathway can lead to a lot of fear, a lot of worry, a lot of anxiety, and then conflict. Like when he did come home from work and he's like, oh, I was just seeing a patient. Like I couldn't call you. I was right in the middle of like doing CPR or something, I'm like, oh, but I thought you were dead.
So, and part of that is when we have that kind of interaction where there's this negative prediction, the one person may have no idea how much of that negative prediction is leading to that anxiety. And so you can imagine that interaction isn't going to be nice and kind and gentle necessarily, right? Because the anxiety and the fear and all of those components, frustration, anger, are going to actually drive that next interaction, rather than if we were in a more positive prediction, we would actually have more likelihood of a more positive type of interaction. And so, for me, part of that is, I need to be aware, okay, why am I not saying that I'm late, right? I mean, I have a responsibility in that. So what we're not saying is each person has responsibility for why the other person is or isn't doing what the desire is. But it is also then, Martin, in this case, has the ability to now switch that from a negative to a positive prediction. And that's the skill set that we're really trying to get to today, is how do we actually move that? So some people, they're worried about when they go talk to their boss, oh, I'm going to get fired, right? That's that catastrophe that we're predicting, rather than, hey, the boss wants to talk to me, right? It's not, and how do we now turn that into this negative and sometimes extreme negative into, one, recognizing what it really is, and two, recognizing that actually we don't know what's going to happen. And now we have an opportunity to start creating a story that's actually more positive.
Yeah, as you're talking about that, I'm thinking of perspective taking and opening up some space with curiosity and like living in that uncertainty. I heard you say but we don't actually know. And uncertainty can feel really scary to some of us. Right. And yet we can lean on uncertainty to go, well, I don't know that Simon got in a car accident and crashed on the side of the road. I don't know that. And maybe he's just helping a patient and he couldn't get to the phone, right? So like cracking that door open. So that is one tool that when you catch yourself going to that negative prediction and it's not helpful, is to notice like, okay, what's the story I'm believing? Oh, I'm going to negative prediction. And instead, I could be curious. I could wonder what else might be going on. what else possibly could be happening in this situation? And in a sense, grounding ourselves with the idea that lots of possibility could be occurring.
And just the fact that we say there are lots of possibility actually moves us away from the catastrophe or the negative into, oh, there's actually a lot of possibilities. Now, I will say this, some of you might have some pretty extensive trauma, and that trauma is going to be triggered in some of these circumstances, and we don't want to ignore that or minimize that because that's a real thing. And those triggers can be very real and feel very, very overwhelming. And so recognize that this is really what we're talking about is those things where we have this pattern of behavior, and now we can start to really talk about how do we change that pattern from being in this negative space into, okay, now there's options and there's actually some positive things that could be actually happening here. But again, we want to recognize, we both recognize that the trauma that some of you might be carrying is very real.
Mm-hmm. And if you're in that situation where you're like, my mind goes to that catastrophizing, that negative prediction, and it's overwhelming, it overtakes me, that is a sign to reach out, get help, because trauma can be healed. And that activation that when you feel totally out of control, that can be cleared out of your system so that you could experience that situation and still stay in a thinking place.
And one of the ways you might know that this is actually a traumatic reaction versus just, I've got this negative prediction going on, is when it's so overwhelming, it's like you can't see any other option.
Mm-hmm.
That's probably a good indicator that that's more of a trauma reaction. Now, what each of us call trauma is going to look different. So again, we're not here to say what trauma it is. Everybody experiences trauma very differently. So again, what we're talking about is if you can notice that you're in this negative prediction and you want to move into the positive prediction, you have some capacity for that. The way to do that is really through that perspective of saying, what other possibilities exist? What other things might be going on? What are the things I know and what are the things I don't know? And recognizing that in the don't know, we can start to be curious about what other options exist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And in that curiosity, one of the tools when we go to the negative prediction is to turn that around into a positive prediction and start imagining the best case scenario, and even like imagine what that would feel like and be like, and like visualize that in your mind. So this happened the other day. Simon and I were taking a walk, and it was after dinner. I was feeling pretty tired and honestly cranky. And I was going like, oh, I just want to get back, and I just want this day to be over, and I'm so cranky, and the rest of the evening is really going to be hard. And Simon stopped me and he's like, well, let's practice positive prediction. So he said, what could you imagine that would be a positive end to the rest of the day? So I started thinking about, oh, I can cuddle up on the couch with you. We can snuggle with our cat. Okay, I'm going to be able to relax and have a cup of tea and feel like my body downshifting out of the anxiety or even kind of the slump. And then he invited me into practicing some gratitudes over the day. And by the time I was done doing that, I was like, oh, this really worked. I mean, and it was what, maybe 2 or 3 minutes. So It was pretty cool.
So again, you guys have now some tools that you can try and practice with, right? So when you start thinking about the negatives, that negative prediction, there are sort of 3 steps we're looking for, right? That we would ask you to try and step into. One is kind of pause, recognize the negative prediction you've got, and ask yourself and be curious about what else could be possible. The second step is really to start thinking about what are the positive predictions that may actually be possible. Okay, we're not saying they're going to happen, but we're saying they're possible. And then the third step really is that gratitude place, because when we can go to a place of gratitude, it actually helps us calm ourselves down and actually to be in a much better grounded position, which is really where we're trying to get to when we get these activations in our bodies and in our emotions. Because when we're activated, we're not going to be able to think about that. We're actually going to be in the emotion part of our brain, not in the thinking part of our brain.
And that gratitude, you talked about grounding, and that actually is a totally other path that really can be helpful when our brains go to that negative prediction. One way that we can shift our thinking is into being in the moment.
Yeah.
And gratitude as that grounding, it's like, okay, what am I grateful for? What am I thankful for? And coming back to not worrying about what's going to happen, but to this moment. Like right now, I'm thankful that I am sitting in a house with AC, something specific like that. Or right now, I'm thankful that we're here doing this video together instead of me worrying about like, how am I going to feel tonight? So really coming back to the here and now. And I started practicing now when I would get worried I couldn't get a hold of Simon and like I couldn't contact him. I would start telling myself, right now, I'm okay. If he's in a car accident, I eventually will find out and then I will deal with that then. But right in this moment, I'm okay. I'm breathing, I'm safe, and I am grounding myself to take care of myself in the moment.
And it doesn't mean that those things might not be true, but we also have to ask ourselves, what's likely? What are the likely scenarios, right? One of the things that I've noticed, right, for me is when I'm in the work environment, I have this desire for people to kind of be at their best. And so I have this prediction that I have to kind of struggle when people aren't at their best, that something's not right. And I have to really concentrate on saying, in this moment, hey, you know what? I'm okay. And we're going to continue to work together. And my positive prediction then switches to this person's trying to do the best they can. And I don't know all the other parts of their lives that might be impacting what's going on right now, but I am going to believe they are trying to do the best they can right now. Now that changes my interaction from why are they not doing the right thing to how can I come alongside? How can I partner? How can I help? Which is a really different type of place than what I would have been if I'd stayed in my negative prediction.
Yeah. So what I hear you saying is this way of thinking about things and reframing can work in any situation.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys have probably got some things in your mind that are coming to mind now in terms of certain situations, some that you think, oh my gosh, I can never get to a positive place. Sometimes the positive places are small, right? It could be going from, I hate working with this person, to, I'm glad this person can do their job so I don't have to do it. That's a positive prediction, right? We're now honoring the fact that they're doing something that either you are not trained to do, that's not what you want to do, or it could be, I'm really glad that we have a team of people and I enjoy, some of the team members, right? So now we can start moving that from that negative place, that positive place.
So our invitation to you is to start noticing when your brain just automatically goes to prediction. And the goal isn't to stop that. The goal is to notice and then decide, what path do I want to be on? Am I going to stick on the worry path? And sometimes we do. We're human. Do I want to shift that and open up some space for what else might be possible and switch into positive prediction? Or there's the other path of grounding yourself in the moment. And our brains really aren't wired to do that. It's something that we need to be intentional to do.
And this is a practice, right? So we encourage you to practice. Most of us have plenty of opportunities to practice. I know I have a lot of practice that I can step into. And if you are struggling with that, or you do have this trauma, we really encourage you to get some help, because as Martin said, trauma can be healed. If you are in a place and you're just wondering more about how can I incorporate this, reach out to us, let us know. Again, we are really excited to be here, and we really want this to be something that you can kind of step into. We're inviting you to step into and practice this.
And we're always open to hearing testimonials. So if you try this, and if it goes good, great. If it goes not so great, that's fine. Share your experiences with us. We would love to hear what's going on.
And so again, we have our YouTube channel. Please look us up on YouTube and subscribe to our channel. We also have our website at smmcoachingconsulting.com, and we have a number of resources available. We're also part of a community called Empowering Minds. And do you want to describe the community a little bit?
Yeah, it's a wellness online community. It is in the Mighty Network, so you can have wellness on the go. It's an app. It's something you can log into your from your computer. And basically, there is a team of us who are putting out information, having experiences, all based on physical wellness, emotional wellness, and nutritional wellness. And it's a great place to find encouragement, find good information, and also support and connect with other people.
And so we'll put the link in the video and also on the description in YouTube. And we are looking forward to hearing from you. We'd really like to hear from you and see how things are going.
All right. Take care.
We'll see you next week.